Have you enjoyed making molds of textures and objects with silicone molding putty, but found that it gets a bit pricey? If so, I have an alternate molding product for you, one that is reusable over and over again. Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another Friday Findings video at keepsakecrafts.net. So this is one of many different brands of a reusable molding plastic. This one's called Instamorph. I found it on Amazon. There are other ones, Omarayu, something like that. And the cool thing about it is that it melts at a fairly low temperature, 140 degrees. You just put it in hot water and it melts. And then it's moldable. Now when mine came, it was in little plastic pellets in this bag, kind of shown here. Sometimes you'll buy it and it'll be in plastic sticks, but it's a very rigid material. It's not like your silicone putty, which is flexible. And the main benefit of this stuff is that it can be reused time and again. So if you're going to make a large mold, like I have this big piece of wood bark that I used for a project. Yeah, you can actually see the picture here of me in the process of making the mold of the bark and then using it to make some polymer clay pieces, which I'll show you in a minute. That used a fairly large quantity of the molding plastic, and that would be a pretty expensive amount of molding putty, which you wouldn't be able to use for anything else. So that's one thing I love about this stuff, is that you can reuse it again and again. So great for using large one-time molds. So let me show you what it looks like when it's melted. This is just a pot that I just took off the stove. And pardon that mine looks quite grungy and dirty. Like I said, I used it to mold tree bark, and so it just got bits and trapped in there. I haven't noticed that it affects the mold quality. And oh, this has started to cool off a little. But you can see that when it's melted, it goes translucent. You also want to be careful that you don't let the water get too hot, or you can burn yourself. So let's see. That's just about right. They said don't let it go over 150. 140 is enough. So that's just about perfect. And right now, some of it's stuck to my pot, but once it cools off, it peels right up. It doesn't stay. So let me get this out, and then I'll show you how to play with it. One thing that's different about this putty from your silicone putty is that it does tend to stick more. Silicone just has a natural non-stick. For example, I thought I would make a texture of my little basket here, but it all really stuck in the crevices. I don't know if I'm going to be able to rescue this. I may just throw the whole basket in hot water and see if I can work this out. I kind of like this little basket. So do think ahead, maybe test out what you're going to do with this. It's a little bit different, like I said. Now here's something cute. Here's a picture frame with a very old, that was about 20 years ago, a few pounds ago, photo of hubby and me. But I thought it was a cute frame to maybe recreate. And because this is firm and rigid and it's not going to be ruined by the plastic sticking to it, I can just make a mold of it, the whole thing, and then you could pour resin into the mold if you make sure and make your sides rigid. You could, there's plastic between the photo and the melted plastic, by the way. So I'm trying to kind of build up walls here, although if I made it out of polymer clay, I could just trim it afterwards and not worry about it too much. And I'm not going to leave this to cool on here. It holds detail well enough if you're careful. I'm going to kind of flatten that out and then remove my frame. And I'll flatten it back out again and let it cool off, and you'll know it's cooling off because it will start turning opaque again from translucent. So the pros for this stuff, it can be reused. If I decide I don't like this picture frame, and this is fully half of my molding plastic, I can just remelt it instead of having it wasted. It's good for making large one-time molds, good when you need a rigid mold, like if you're going to pour something in, like resin, although if you use enough of the silicone you can. And by the way, it does take pretty good detail. This is the project that I made with that tree bark that I showed earlier. And these are just polymer clay pieces. Here's a picture of me using that big mold and just taking pieces of brown marbled clay and shaping my little fairy garden bridge pieces. Now the cons of this is that it's not flexible, although that can be a pro. It just depends on what the kind of project you have. It's quite rigid. Another con, I think, is that you have to bother to get out a pot and water and wait for it to heat up and wait for it to cool off. It does cool kind of quickly, so you do have to have all your things ready and be ready to work fast. Another cool thing about this is that you can use this stuff to make objects. It doesn't just have to be a mold material, it can be the actual object material. Like on the back of the bag, they give you an idea. They made a hanger, I guess maybe something specific. They made a handle for a tool. Have you ever had one of those, a little tiny plastic part that was broken and it was such a simple thing but you needed that exact thing? Well, you could use your silicone molding putty, make a mold of the object, put back together, and then press this stuff into the mold, let it cool, and as this shows, you can drill it, sand it, cut it, and have yourself an object. The only thing is it can't be subject to over 140 degrees Fahrenheit, so maybe you couldn't make a replacement part for your dishwasher because it would get too hot and then go all floppy. But those are just some ideas to get you started on a different product for making molds that I think you might find useful in certain situations. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you're interested in the supplies I used, click on the link in the upper right, the lower left, or the description box. That will go to my blog post where I always have a complete supply list and links to products. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you'd like to get freebies from me and bonus tutorials, check out my Patreon page for how you can do that. Happy creating. Bye-bye.